Help me God.
So help me God.
Namibia's new president kicked out over 500 Americans without negotiation, not because of war, not because of sanctions, but because they broke visa rules. And for the first time, someone enforced them. Her name is Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah. She's the first woman to lead Namibia, and one of the few in Africa right now who's treating sovereignty like it means something. But why start her presidency like this? What else is she trying to fix or undo? Let's find out. On her first day in office, Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah did not give speeches about hope. She didn't pose for symbolic photos or thank the establishment that delivered her the presidency. Instead, she walked into the cabinet room and told her ministers that the era of comfort and silence was over. No metaphors, no handshakes, just a firm demand: deliver results or leave. For decades, Namibia's political machinery has operated on a quiet rhythm of delays, bloated bureaucracy, and loyalty over performance. Cabinets grew wider, budgets leaked into vanity projects, and positions became rewards for allegiance rather than ability. Nandi-Ndaitwah didn't just recognize the rot, she attacked its structure directly. Within days, she slashed the number of ministries from 21 to 14. Entire portfolios were merged, overlapping roles were dissolved, and unnecessary offices were closed without warning. This was not administrative reform. It was a surgical cut to a government long protected by political insulation. She made it clear, no one's seat was safe and no office was permanent. It wasn't just about saving money. It was about removing the fog that had allowed inefficiency to thrive for decades. In many African governments, size is mistaken for strength, the illusion that more ministries mean more governance. Nandi-Ndaitwah disagreed. For her, fewer ministries mean fewer places to hide, and the results go deeper than appearances. By dismantling old power clusters, she weakened the patronage networks that once controlled policy-making from behind the scenes. She didn't just reduce size, she cut the strings. Her message wasn't aimed at international observers. It was aimed directly at the Namibian people, many of whom have grown tired of watching leaders talk about development while hiding behind red tape and ceremonial roles. In her words, the government must now act like a servant, not a spectator. Ministers were instructed to stop hiding behind excuses of process and protocol. If roads aren't built, if electricity doesn't reach rural towns, if food prices spiral while officials attend policy workshops, then someone must answer. And she's making sure it won't be the people. And there's another layer to this reform that many outside Namibia might miss. By gutting the bureaucracy, she's making room. Room for a new kind of state, one that can pivot quickly, respond locally, and manage national wealth with fewer filters. She's not just clearing desks. She's laying the foundation for something that hasn't existed before: a lean, responsive African government that spends less time talking and more doing. Of course, this won't win her many friends inside the old elite. Already, whispers from the political class are growing louder, warnings that she's consolidating power or undermining tradition. But for her, tradition isn't sacred when it protects incompetence. And if she dismantled the old political structure in her first days, the next question becomes urgent. What exactly is she replacing it with? What does she want to build? And how far is she willing to go to do it? Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. You don't tear down a government structure unless you already have a blueprint for something bigger. And Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah didn't come to power just to trim the fat. She came to redirect the blood flow of the nation's economy. Days after disassembling Namibia's oversized political machinery, she unveiled her economic masterstroke, an $85 billion Namibian dollar investment plan, roughly $4.7 billion, focused not on slogans or short-term fixes, but on rebuilding the country's entire production base from the ground up. This was more than a stimulus package. It was a controlled detonation of economic dependency. Her administration set a measurable goal: create 250,000 new jobs by 2029. In a nation where nearly half the youth are unemployed, this isn't a lofty dream, it's a survival mandate. But what makes the plan different isn't just its ambition, it's where the money is going. and what it refuses to fund. Gone are the days of dumping funds into international conferences, symbolic partnerships, and endless development dialogues that serve donor PR more than local people. Instead, Nandi-Ndaitwah is putting capital where labor lives: infrastructure, industry, and energy. The first component of her plan is hard infrastructure, not just roads for trade, but roads that reach isolated regions where the state has never been fully present. By building corridors through underdeveloped areas, she's not only enabling market access but physically reconnecting the country. This isn't a transportation project, it's a national reintegration effort. Next comes industrial manufacturing, a sector Namibia has long neglected in favor of raw exports. Nandi-Ndaitwah wants to flip that script. Her government is incentivizing local production by supporting the creation of industrial parks where Namibian companies, not foreign corporations, can process goods, assemble materials, and manufacture for both domestic and regional markets. It's a pivot that separates her from leaders who talk about economic liberation, but continue exporting raw minerals and importing finished goods. To her, ownership begins with the ability to produce, but the boldest part of the investment plan lies in its energy transformation. Rather than cling to outdated oil dependency, she's betting big on renewables, especially green hydrogen and solar. Namibia has sunlight in abundance and space to scale. Under her plan, these resources won't remain untapped. They'll power both homes and industries, forming the backbone of Africa's clean energy future. This is also where the plan turns geopolitical. European and Asian markets are already watching closely, not just because of the energy, but because Nandi-Ndaitwah is refusing to let Namibia become a cheap resource pit. Any foreign interest must now align with local benefit. In short, investors are welcome, but only if they build, hire, and train Namibians. Critics call it risky, her supporters call it overdue, but even skeptics admit one thing: it's precise. Every dollar has a role, every project a deadline. And with fewer ministries to delay execution, her government is moving fast. Of course, economic plans don't exist in a vacuum. For them to succeed, the state must have full control over the resources they depend on. And while most African leaders lease out that control to multinationals and foreign brokers, Nandi-Ndaitwah took a different route, one that shocked the oil industry and sent a message to the continent. If you want to build a nation, you can't rent your wealth. You have to own it. And that's exactly what she did next. In most countries, oil discoveries come with celebration. In Namibia, they came with a warning. When international media reported that the country could soon become one of Africa's biggest oil producers, foreign investors raced in with contracts and quiet expectations. They'd seen it before: a resource-rich African state eager for partnerships, a few handshakes, and decades of extraction in exchange for minimal royalties and broken promises. But this time, something didn't go as planned. Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah didn't just greet the news of Namibia's oil potential with pride, she responded with a seizure of authority. Her administration passed a decision that stunned even her critics. The entire oil and gas sector would now be overseen directly by the office of the president. No more ministerial loopholes, no more technocratic shielding, no more third-party discretion. From now on, Namibia's energy decisions would come straight from the top. It wasn't symbolic, it was surgical. In doing so, she closed the gates to middlemen and consultants who typically broker deals behind closed doors. She also placed herself in a position where she could personally block, approve, or rewrite any foreign agreement involving Namibian oil. And more importantly, she signaled to global markets that Namibia would no longer operate as a passive supplier of crude oil. It would demand a seat at the table as a producer, processor, and global player. To make this clear, she ordered an immediate feasibility study for a domestic oil refinery, not one owned by foreign companies, but a Namibian facility, built on Namibian soil, operated under Namibian law. The vision is simple: oil should not leave the ground unless it leaves value behind, and that's only part of the story. While most African nations are still negotiating basic petroleum laws, Nandi-Ndaitwah is moving Namibia toward a dual energy economy, one that doesn't just extract fossil fuels but simultaneously leads the continent in clean energy innovation. Her flagship? Green hydrogen. Namibia has already signed preliminary cooperation agreements with Germany and other European nations to explore green hydrogen production, the fuel of the future. But under Nandi-Ndaitwah's terms, this won't be another donor-driven experiment. Instead, foreign interest must align with Namibian infrastructure, jobs, and ownership stakes. Green hydrogen isn't just energy, it's leverage, and she plans to use it. But it's not just about hydrogen. Namibia is also home to critical minerals, lithium, rare earths, graphite, the raw ingredients that power electric vehicles, smartphones, and the global tech ecosystem. In the past, these minerals were mined and shipped abroad with barely a trace left behind. That ends now. Her administration is already rewriting mining policy to require local beneficiation, meaning foreign companies must process materials inside Namibia or leave the resources untouched. No more raw exports, no more colonial-era contracts. If you want Namibian minerals, you build Namibian factories. This isn't just about economics. It's about reversing a century of resource theft disguised as development. Of course, this approach has triggered alarm bells in European investment circles. But to Nandi-Ndaitwah, that discomfort is the point. Namibia will not apologize for demanding control over its wealth. It will no longer be grateful for exploitation masked as assistance. Still, reclaiming energy and mineral sovereignty is only one part of the puzzle. Because even if a nation controls what's underground, it still faces another question. Who does it allow above ground? And that's where Nandi-Ndaitwah took her most controversial step, one that directly challenged the global order and put her face to face with one of the world's superpowers. Controlling your oil is one thing, but controlling who walks your soil, that's a different kind of power. It's quiet, it's personal. And for Namibia's new president, it was non-negotiable. Shortly after centralizing Namibia's energy sector, Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah made headlines for something no African leader had dared to enforce so bluntly. She ordered the deportation of over 500 US nationals for visa violations. No warnings, no diplomatic back channels, no strategic silence. They broke the law, they left. For decades, Westerners operating in Africa, whether as investors, consultants, missionaries, or advisors, have often acted under the assumption that immigration rules are for others, that overstaying a visa or working under a tourist entry wouldn't be treated as a crime, because in most cases, it wasn't, until now. Nandi-Ndaitwah didn't just enforce immigration law, she weaponized it as a statement of sovereignty and reciprocity. If African citizens can be detained, humiliated, and deported abroad for the smallest documentation error, why should foreigners in Africa be treated with unspoken immunity? She called the policy simple: no visa, no stay. And it wasn't just about the United States. Her government began auditing visa compliance across the board, targeting unregistered foreign workers in mining zones, NGO staff bypassing residency regulations, and even short-term consultants embedded in government agencies. Overnight, the landscape changed. Namibia was no longer open to informal influence. Presence now required legitimacy. This move unsettled foreign embassies. It disrupted businesses, and it triggered a subtle but visible panic among international actors who had long relied on Namibia's leniency. But for Nandi-Ndaitwah, that discomfort was overdue. She was correcting an imbalance and setting a precedent. But immigration wasn't her only battle with foreign overreach. She also reached backward, into the depths of Namibia's colonial history, and pulled out a wound that had never truly closed. Between 1904 and 1908, German colonial forces carried out one of Africa's first attacks, unaliving tens of thousands of Ovaherero and Nama people in what is now Namibia. For years, Germany's response had been cautious, some acknowledgement, limited aid, but no full apology, no reparations, just quiet avoidance dressed up as diplomacy. Nandi-Ndaitwah changed that tone completely. She rejected previous agreements that offered development aid as symbolic atonement. Her administration is now demanding a formal apology and direct reparations, not just for the historical record, but for the living descendants of the victims. This isn't just about Germany, it's about drawing a line in the post-colonial sand. Africa, she argues, cannot talk about economic transformation while refusing to address the debts of colonial violence. And nations that profited from the destruction of African societies must be held accountable, not with apologies whispered in boardrooms, but with binding commitments and public truth. Some have dismissed this as idealism, but her demand is precise. She doesn't want charity, she wants restitution. And unlike others, she's not making this a side note. She's putting it at the center of foreign policy. What ties her immigration crackdown and her colonial demands together is simple: dignity. She is building a state that doesn't just control its borders, resources, and economy, but also controls the narrative about who Namibia is and what it will no longer tolerate. But none of this, not the deportations, not the refinery plans, not the political purges, exist in isolation. They're all threads in something larger. Because what Nandi-Ndaitwah is building isn't just a policy platform. It's a prototype, one that might redefine what African leadership looks like. And that's exactly where we're going next. What Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah is building in Namibia doesn't end at her country's borders. It was never meant to. Each decision she's made, from cutting ministries to evicting overstayers, from nationalizing resources to demanding reparations, fits into a broader philosophy that is no longer whispered in side rooms or buried in dusty liberation manifestos. It is Pan-Africanism, reloaded, redefined, and revived. But unlike past rhetoric-heavy iterations of the ideology, Nandi-Ndaitwah isn't talking about unity through summits and slogans. She's constructing unity through models, through evidence, through replication. What if an African country could reject foreign dependence and not collapse? What if it could process its minerals, feed its population, and enforce its immigration law, and still stand? To answer those questions, she's turning Namibia into a working case study. Her agricultural overhaul is one such example. Rather than importing food from former colonizers, her administration has initiated the development of large-scale super farms designed to supply the nation internally and cut food imports by 80% before the end of the decade. These aren't legacy projects. They're mechanized, tech-enabled zones where youth are trained, employed, and encouraged to see farming not as a tradition, but as a profession. This isn't nostalgia, it's survival reimagined. By transforming agriculture from subsistence to sovereignty, she's sending a message to the continent. You don't need handouts if you control your harvest. And when that message comes from a nation like Namibia, often overlooked in continental debates, it cuts deeper. It tells larger African economies, if we can do it, you have no excuse. The same applies to social development. Nandi-Ndaitwah is investing in sports infrastructure, youth hubs, and cultural revival projects not as distractions, but as core parts of national identity. In a world that has often erased African confidence in its institutions, she's attempting something rare, building trust in the state by building spaces where citizens can grow, compete, and connect. And then, there's the leadership style itself. Unlike many African presidents who surround themselves with loyalists or family members, Nandi-Ndaitwah's cabinet is emerging as a mix of technocrats, women, and grassroots organizers. Her appointment of Lucia Witbooi as vice president wasn't just progressive, it was strategic. She's showing that power can be shared without being diluted. That's perhaps her most radical act, redefining what leadership looks like in a continent often trapped between military rulers and donor darlings. She doesn't shout, she doesn't beg, and she doesn't wait for foreign validation. She just moves, and every move echoes beyond Windhoek. Leaders in West Africa are watching. Reformists in East Africa are taking notes. Civil societies in the Sahel are citing her speeches. Because deep down, everyone on this continent knows, if one nation can pull it off, it breaks the myth that none can. And maybe that's why her presidency feels different. Not because she's the first woman, but because she's treating that moment not as symbolism, but as a starting point for something continental in scale. She isn't just governing Namibia. She's building a mirror, one that dares Africa to look at itself and finally recognize its power. While much of the world was still reacting to her domestic shakeups, Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah was already recalibrating Namibia's position on the global chessboard, not through loud provocations, but through subtle shifts in diplomatic tone and strategy. Namibia, under past administrations, had taken on the role that many post-colonial African nations assumed, the cautious negotiator. Always polite, always thankful, always deferential. But Nandi-Ndaitwah has ushered in a new language, one that blends assertiveness with precision and gratitude with boundaries. In multilateral spaces, her delegation no longer speaks the language of request. They speak in terms of partnership. Namibia is no longer positioning itself as a country seeking help. It is offering value. Whether it's green hydrogen, agricultural exports, or critical minerals, the tone has shifted from "we need" to "we have. Let's talk." Do you think now Namibia's success is certain? Why do you think no one was able to do what she is doing? Let us know in the comment section. Is she the first leader to actually serve Namibia? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.